The twin suns of Valera 3 hung low over the dusty horizon, casting long orange shadows across the jagged cliffs. The planet was quiet, almost eerily so except for the faint hum of energy fields guarding the mining outposts. Most species avoided Valera 3. It was dangerous, lawless, and far from the reach of the Galactic Council. But some, like the mercenaries who prowled its deserts, thrived here. Lyra crouched behind a jagged rock, her metallic limbs humming softly as she checked the readings on her wrist device. Her heart, well, the equivalent her species called core pulse, beat faster with each passing second. She had been captured 2 days ago by the black market mercenaries, and every hour that passed made her feel smaller, more expendable. They said my freedom costs too much, she whispered to herself, and I have nothing they want. A shadow shifted across the sand. 2 mercenaries, tall and brutish, stepped into view. Their eyes glinted with anticipation, not for her safety but for profit. "Move, alien," one of them growled. "Time to pay up." Lyra's stomach twisted. She had no money, no weapons, and no allies. But she did have her mind, and she knew how to survive. Just as one of the mercenaries reached for her, a loud explosion rocked the rocks behind them. Sand and dust shot into the air, and the mercenaries stumbled. From the dust emerged a sleek, silver ship hovering with humming thrusters, its lights cutting through the haze. A voice crackled through a small communicator. "Step away from her now!" The mercenaries froze. Then, recognizing the insignia on the ship's hull, they cursed. "Rylan," one spat, gritting his teeth. "That human thinks he can interfere." The human, Captain Rylan, stepped down from the ship. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with a calm confidence that made even the largest mercenary pause. "I paid for her," he said simply. "And I always keep my word." Lyra blinked. Humans were unpredictable, often reckless, and sometimes foolish, but she had never seen one like this. His gaze was steady, unwavering. Something about him felt different. She wanted to run, hide, test him, but there was no time. The mercenaries lunged. Rylan moved faster than expected. With a low, controlled shout, he activated a compact energy weapon. A brilliant blue beam shot from the device, striking the nearest mercenary square in the chest. The alien went flying backwards, screeching in pain. The second mercenary pulled a plasma blade, but Rylan had already rolled forward, grabbing the alien by its arm and throwing it into a sand dune. Lyra's jaw dropped. Humans were supposed to be fragile, yet here was one who seemed to dance through danger like it was nothing. She felt a spark of hope, cautious yet undeniable. "Come on," Rylan said, holding out his hand. "We don't have much time." For a moment, Lyra hesitated. She had been betrayed before, sold to mercenaries, and promised freedom that never came. But the sincerity in his voice, the determination in his eyes made her step forward. She took his hand, and together they sprinted toward the ship. Inside, the ship's cabin was small but efficient. Consoles blinked with information, and the soft hum of engines filled the space. Lyra collapsed onto a bench, trying to calm her racing pulse. "Thank you," she whispered. Rylan shook his head. "No need, you're free now. But freedom isn't enough. You need safety, and I intend to get you there." Lyra's brow furrowed. Why help me?" "I'm just someone they wanted to sell." "Because I keep my word," Rylan said simply. "And because sometimes humans do what's right even when it's dangerous." The ship lifted off, gliding over the rocky terrain with smooth precision. Outside, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of crimson and violet across the sky. Lyra watched silently, still unsure what to think of this human and his strange sense of honor. Hours passed in silence. The ship cruised through the dusty atmosphere, heading for the orbiting spaceport. Lyra finally broke the quiet. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice tentative. "We get you somewhere safe," Rylan said. "Somewhere the mercenaries can't reach. And then—" He paused, studying her face. "Then you decide what you want to do next." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. No one had ever given her a choice before. "And what if I can't pay you back?" "You already have," Rylan said with a small smile. "You trusted me. That's payment enough." Despite herself, Lyra allowed a small smile. Humans were strange, but sometimes their strangeness was good. As the ship reached orbit, sensors pinged warnings. Mercenary ships were tracking them, launching pursuit drones. Lyra's eyes widened. "They found us?" Rylan nodded. "They think your capture is worth more than my life. We'll see about that." In the following chaos, Rylan demonstrated why humans were respected across the galaxy. He maneuvered the ship with precision, dodging laser fire and weaving through asteroid debris. Lyra assisted with technical operations, guiding him around mines and traps set by the pursuing mercenaries. Despite the danger, she felt alive, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, after what felt like hours, they entered a nebula, a thick cloud of ionized gas that masked their escape. The mercenary ships faltered, confused by the interference. "We're safe, for now," Ryland said, breathing heavily but smiling. Lyra leaned back in her seat, staring at the swirling colors outside. She had survived, yes, but more importantly, she had found something she hadn't expected. Someone who kept his word. Ryland looked at her, reading the thoughts she didn't voice. "I know it's hard to trust, but humans, we stick to our promises, even when it's dangerous, even when no one else will." Lyra nodded slowly. "I want to believe you." "I really do, you will," Ryland said. "In time, but for now just hold on. The journey is far from over." Outside, the nebula shimmered like a sea of liquid light. Inside, two unlikely allies prepared for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. One was a human, steadfast and determined. The other, an alien engineer, cautious but curious. Together, they were about to face dangers that no one could predict, but they would face them as one. Lyra didn't know what awaited her on the horizon, but for the first time in her life, she felt hope. And in the dangerous, lawless reaches of space, hope was worth more than any ransom, more than any treasure, more than life itself. For the first time, she understood what humans meant when they said, a promise was worth everything. The hum of Ryland's ship filled the narrow cabin as it drifted through the dense nebula. Outside, streaks of orange and violet gas twisted like living rivers. Lyra sat at the console, fingers dancing over alien keys she had never imagined using in such a combination. "We should be safe here," she said, her voice cautious. "The mercenaries can't track us through this nebula." "Safe isn't a word I use lightly," Ryland replied, keeping his eyes on the controls. "They'll find a way." "They always do," Lyra frowned. Humans were persistent. Sometimes reckless, yes, but they never gave up. That quality both frightened and fascinated her. Hours passed in tense silence. Lyra, for the first time in her life, felt a strange connection with someone else. A human who didn't judge her for being a stranger, for being lesser in the eyes of the galaxy's mercenaries. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the cabin. Lyra spun in her chair. "What is it?" Ryland's jaw tightened. "Pirate drones. Lots of them. They must have spotted our escape trail." Outside, dozens of small ships swarmed like metallic hornets, each firing rapid plasma bolts. The nebula's interference helped, but only barely. "Can you shake them?" Lyra asked, trying to sound calm. Ryland's hands moved swiftly over the controls. "We're going to try." "Hang on." The ship lurched violently as the first plasma bolt hit the hull. Sparks flew and the cabin shuddered. Lyra clutched the console. She wasn't afraid. Fear was a luxury, but adrenaline burned in her veins. Ryland maneuvered the ship through a twisting path of asteroids, using the terrain as cover. The drones followed relentlessly, but the human's ingenuity showed again and again. He released decoy signals, flipped the ship upside down, and accelerated through narrow gaps the aliens didn't even attempt to navigate. Lyra couldn't help but marvel. Humans were fragile compared to most species, yet their thinking, their creativity was unmatched. One human brain could outwit entire fleets. "This way," Lyra said suddenly, pointing at a narrow canyon ahead. "The gravitational field's there. They'll lose control if they follow." Ryland glanced at her. "You sure?" "Absolutely," she said. "Trust me." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Lead the way." Together they dove into the canyon. Plasma fire streaked past, drones screeched in pursuit, and rocks shifted from the blasts. Lyra guided them precisely through gravitational anomalies, and one by one, the drones were forced to crash against the rocky canyon walls. Finally, the last drone exploded in a dazzling flash. Silence returned, broken only by the ship's soft hum. "We did it," Ryland said, breathing heavily, but his eyes sparkled with satisfaction. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "You're impressive," Ryland chuckled. "We're impressive together. Don't forget that." As they set a course toward a neutral station in nearby human space, Lyra realized something strange. She was beginning to trust a human, and not just trust, but respect him. respect for his courage, his skill, and most of all, his honor. But the galaxy was never kind to those who trusted too easily. The next morning, as they approached the station, Rylan received a communication. A holographic figure appeared, its face hidden behind a mask. "Captain Rylan," the figure said, voice distorted. "We know who you are. Hand over the alien and we might let you live." Rylan's eyes narrowed. "You'll have to catch us first." The transmission ended. Lyra looked at him. They know about me?" "Of course they do," Rylan said grimly. "And they won't stop until they either have you or I'm gone. That's why we keep moving." The station loomed ahead, a massive ring orbiting a small gas giant. Humans, aliens, and other species mingled within its corridors, all looking for opportunities, deals, or danger. Rylan docked the ship carefully, scanning for threats. Inside the station, they moved quickly. Lyra stayed close to Rylan, noting how every human in the vicinity seemed small, fragile, yet capable of confidence and cunning. It was strange to think that a species so physically weak could outmaneuver entire fleets and survive where stronger aliens failed. They found a quiet corner, but the mercenaries were relentless. Lyra's wrist device pinged warnings of proximity alarms. Rylan's brow furrowed. "They're here," he muttered. "We need to hide." They ducked into a maintenance corridor, shadows blending with the dim lighting. Suddenly, a group of mercenaries rounded the corner. One spotted them. "Over there," the alien shouted. Rylan acted without hesitation. He grabbed a nearby cargo container and rolled it in front of the corridor, blocking the entrance. He drew a small energy weapon, firing precise shots that disabled the mercenaries' devices without killing them. Lyra gasped. "Hugh, you never hesitate." "Humans don't," Rylan said simply. "We act, and we protect what we promised." The mercenaries regrouped, realizing they couldn't capture the pair without significant risk. They withdrew, cursing and vowing revenge. Lyra exhaled, tension leaving her body in slow waves. "You really keep your word?" she said softly. Rylan smiled, though his eyes remained sharp. "I said I would get you to safety. That hasn't changed." For the next few days, they traveled together, avoiding patrols and pirates. Lyra's technical skills proved invaluable. She hacked security systems, guided them through shortcuts, and predicted ambush points. Rylan's human ingenuity complemented her abilities perfectly, combining speed, strategy, and adaptability in ways no alien enemy could anticipate. Despite the constant danger, a bond formed between them. Lyra began to admire humans not for their strength or weapons, but for their persistence, loyalty, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. One evening, as they rested aboard the ship, Lyra asked quietly, "Do all humans stick to their word like you?" Rylan shook his head. "Not all. Some are greedy, selfish, or afraid. But those who do, we become unstoppable. We fight for what's right even when the universe says we can't." Lyra studied him, a newfound respect in her eyes. "Then maybe the galaxy isn't as hopeless as I thought." Rylan chuckled. "Hope is human nature, and it's contagious." Their conversation was cut short when the ship's sensors detected an incoming fleet. Not pirates, not mercenaries, something larger, more organized. "Alien raiders," Lyra said immediately, recognition in her voice. "They control the mining sectors near Valira 3. They're after me, or whatever you're protecting me for." Rylan's face hardened. "Looks like we're not done fighting yet." The raider ships were heavily armed and fast. Lyra calculated escape routes, but Rylan shook his head. "We can't outrun them. Not all of them. But we can outthink them." With a nod, Lyra worked at the controls, rerouting power, hacking external systems, and creating false signals. Rylan piloted the ship like a conductor leading an orchestra, dodging missiles, weaving through asteroid belts, and using every trick in the human playbook. Hours of tense maneuvering passed. Several raider ships were disabled. Some crashed into asteroids, and the rest were forced to retreat. Lyra could hardly believe what had just happened. You saved us again," she said, voice trembling. Rylan shrugged. "We save each other. That's how humans survive. That's how they keep promises." As the ship drifted into calm space once more, Lyra looked at Rylan with newfound understanding. For the first time, she truly believed in the human spirit, the courage, the ingenuity, the loyalty. And she realized that she too would fight alongside him, not as a passenger but as a partner. The galaxy was dangerous, and the road ahead was filled with enemies and uncertainty. But together, they were stronger than anything that could stop them. And Lyra knew deep inside that this human, this one man who had kept his word, was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was not just a savior, he was a symbol of what humans could be, clever, brave, and relentless in the face of impossible odds. Somewhere deep in space, hope glimmered, and the two unlikely allies prepared for whatever came next. The mercenaries, the raiders, and the chaos of the galaxy would not deter them, because humans kept their promises, and that was a power no one could underestimate. The planet Mira 7 loomed before them, a sprawling industrial world controlled by alien raiders. Smokestacks belched thick clouds, and the sound of massive machinery rumbled like distant thunder. Lyra stared at the planet from the ship's viewport, heart pounding. This was her homeworld's neighboring system, the place where her people's freedom had been stolen by mercenaries and raiders alike. "We have to go in," Lyra said quietly, her hands trembling slightly. "If we want to save anyone, this is it." Rylan nodded, expression grim. "I know, but it's dangerous. They have fleets, automated defenses, and ground forces. We'll need a plan." Lyra studied the planet's surface. "We can't fight them head-on, but we can use their own systems against them. I can hack their surveillance and open paths for us. You'll need to guide us through their defenses." Rylan smiled faintly. "Sounds like a human-alien collaboration. Let's do it." They approached Mira 7 at night, cloaking their ship with makeshift stealth technology. Lyra tapped rapidly on the console, bypassing surveillance arrays and unlocking gate protocols. Rylan maneuvered the ship through narrow passages above the industrial complexes, dodging patrol ships and automated turrets. "Almost there," Lyra whispered. "Just past that tower and we can land without being seen." The landing was smooth, though tension filled every second. Rylan and Lyra slipped out of the ship, blending into the shadows. Lyra's limbs hummed as she scanned the area, mapping the patrol routes of raiders and automated drones. "They've captured dozens of engineers and workers," she said, voice low. "They plan to force them into labor for the next decade." Rylan's jaw tightened. "Then we stopped them. Tonight." They crept through corridors, avoiding guards and using Lyra's hacking to disable cameras. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. Humans were fragile, but their precision and courage were unmatched. Lyra realized more than ever that humans weren't just strong. They were clever, adaptable, and persistent. They reached the first holding cell. Several engineers were trapped inside, exhausted and terrified. Lyra quickly hacked the locks while Rylan covered the hallway, energy weapon ready. You're human?" one engineer whispered in awe. Rylan nodded. "Yes, and we're here to get you out." Once the engineers were free, Lyra guided them through maintenance tunnels, avoiding patrols with her intimate knowledge of the systems. But the raiders were not easy to outsmart. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights flashing across the corridors. "They found us," Lyra said, panic creeping into her voice. Rylan didn't hesitate. "Then we fight smarter, not harder." Using a combination of misdirection and clever sabotage, Rylan led the raiders into automated traps. Conveyor belts carried them into holding cells of their own. Turrets fired selectively at decoy signals, and Lyra's hacking caused doors to slam shut at precise moments. The raiders' own defenses became their downfall. By the time they reached the central control tower, most of the raider forces were either trapped, confused, or retreating. Lyra hacked into the mainframe, broadcasting a message to all captured workers. "Escape through the northern docks. Go quickly." Rylan covered the hallway, deflecting energy bolts and knocking down guards. Lyra couldn't believe how fearless he was. Humans weren't invincible, but they had a willpower that made them seem unstoppable. Finally, they reached the command center. The raider leader, a towering alien with metallic armor, waited. His voice was deep and cold. "You think you can stop me, human?" Rylan stepped forward. "I don't think, I know. And I always keep my word." The raider laughed, raising his weapon. But Rylan didn't move. Instead, he activated a device he had hidden on his belt, an EMP pulse generator. It fired, and the raider's armor sparked, electronics failing. Lyra and Rylan moved in, subduing him with quick, precise strikes. With the leader captured and systems disabled, the remaining raiders surrendered or fled. Lyra couldn't believe the efficiency, the bravery, the intelligence of this human who had kept his promise at every turn. Outside, workers were escaping through the northern docks. Ships took off, people fleeing for freedom. Lyra watched them, tears welling in her eyes. This was what she had fought for, what Rylan had promised. And he had delivered. Your word. You kept it, Lyra whispered. Rylan smiled, though exhaustion showed on his face. I told you I would. And I meant it. That's what humans do, we don't leave people behind. Lyra's gaze softened. I doubted you before. I thought humans were reckless, selfish. But you are different, Rylan shrugged. Not different. Just determined. And we all have a choice to stand by our word or not. I chose to stand by mine. They returned to the ship, carrying a few grateful engineers with them. Lyra looked out at the industrial planet below, smoke still rising from the ruins, and felt a deep sense of closure. Her people's freedom, at least for now, had been secured. Where now? Lyra asked. Rylan checked the navigation console. Back to human space, to safety, to regroup. Then, we see how we can help the others. Lyra nodded. I never thought humans could be heroes in a galaxy full of monsters. But now I believe. The ship lifted off, rising above the industrial complexes. The suns of Mirror 7 cast long shadows, but in those shadows, hope burned brighter than ever. In the days that followed, Lyra and Rylan traveled together, returning captured workers to their homes, sabotaging raider operations, and spreading the reputation of humans as beings who were clever, courageous, and honorable. Lyra's admiration for Rylan and for humans in general grew with every action. Humans were fragile in body, yes, but indomitable in spirit. They stood by their word, they fought for justice, and they used their minds to overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. One evening, as they rested aboard the ship, Lyra turned to Rylan. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you. Not just for saving me, but for showing me what humans can be. Rylan smiled, his eyes reflecting the stars outside. It's not just me. It's all of us. Humans have survived countless threats, wars, and disasters. We adapt, we endure, and when we give our word, we keep it. Lyra nodded slowly, feeling a deep sense of peace. For the first time in her life, she truly believed in the goodness and strength of humans, and she knew that wherever the galaxy took her, she would never forget the lessons she had learned. Courage, loyalty, and the power of keeping one's word. As the ship glided through the calm stars, the galaxy stretched endlessly before them. Challenges would come, dangers would arise, but Lyra and Rylan were ready. Together they had faced impossible odds, outwitted stronger enemies, and proven that humans, though physically fragile, were a force no one could underestimate. And in that moment, Lyra realized the truth. In a universe filled with greed, cruelty, and chaos, humans stood out not for their strength, but for their heart, their mind, and their unwavering resolve. Because humans kept their word.